Thank you so very much. So, vision. This is really about where we're going. Really what we're really all about, what we're trying to accomplish, what we're doing it all for. I want to tell you a quick story. So back in 2009, I had it all figured out. I had about $6 million worth of real estate. I was bringing in about $65,000 a month in revenues. Everybody that saw me from the outside in thought, wow, this guy's really got it all figured out. What they didn't know was I was headed for a pretty major iceberg. I'm going to get to that story here in just a second. One of the main things that I have come to appreciate is my personal vision for what I'm doing it all for. And that's these two guys right here, Leland and Logan. One of my favorite pictures. They're 10 and 13 years old, and they are my world. And at the end of the day, my vision is to make sure that I raise two good men. And that's what's going to happen. It might be the death of me. It almost was the death of one of them over Easter. This is on camera, right? Okay, great. But back in 2009, they weren't in my world yet. And really, what had happened was there was lots of things going on that I just didn't understand why things were going so badly for me. I was bringing $65,000 a month, and I was working hard. And I grew up in a world where my father taught us all to work very, very hard. As a Marine, I had a good work ethic. I learned I was a part of a celestial navigation program where some of the smartest minds were in the navigation shop. And it was, these were really, really good, motivated Marines. But when I was going through what I went through in 2009, when I was bringing in $65,000 a month in revenues, and all of a sudden, in 1 month, that went from $65,000 a month in revenues to $30,000 a month in revenues. Do you think I had a problem? I had a problem. I had a really, really big problem. So I did what any hard-working person would do. I worked harder. I went from working 16-hour days to 18-hour days to 19-hour days to 22-hour days. I would grab naps wherever I could, in the Lowe's parking lot sometimes. And sometimes people, like one guy woke me up honking his horn just because the light turned green. It was just really obnoxious. And things were just going so badly for me. And I remember a really good friend of mine, she was an artist, and she drew a really good picture of me. She said, "Do you mind if I drew a self-portrait of you?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be fantastic." And I think she really got a really good likeness of me during that period of time. It really does look a lot like me back then. I had a little bit more hair, but not by much. But kidding aside, it was all a shell game. Everybody on the outside looking in was like, wow, look at him hustle, look at him do, look at all the doing he's doing. And it was all a shell game. And within about 6 months, my $6 million portfolio turned into about $1.5 million. And if that wasn't bad enough, I had a relationship that was circling the bowl, and on top of that, I got a cold. And I did the right thing. I never do the right thing. I went to the doctor. And went to the doctor. Doctor said, take some medicine, and what else? Get some rest. So I took the medicine, and I slept at Lowe's. I thought that was enough. But what happened was I got really, really sick, to the point where the only way that I could actually breathe was to put pressure against my chest and lean over the back of the chair. I was getting double pneumonia, and I didn't know it. Now, I grew up with asthma, so I knew what it felt like to breathe through a cocktail straw, but something was really different. Something was very, very wrong. When things got real bad, I said, well, I better go back to the hospital. Now, this hospital was newly constructed, so I knew something was I just went there and figured, well, it's a new hospital. It's probably going to give me state-of-the-art care. Well, unfortunately, they hadn't quite worked out their triage system yet, but they put me in a triage room and laid me down on this gurney, and with that, they left the room and shut the door. Some promise of breathing treatment. And I laid there alone, wondering, waiting. Began mouthing for air like a fish out of water. And I remember the room starting to close in on me. It was getting dark at the fringes. My hands and my feet were tingling. And I remembered, ironically enough, that this was the effects of hypoxic hypoxia. I learned that in the Marines. And I thought, wow, this is where I'm going to die. Now, you might think that you'd be panicked at a situation like this, but one of the benefits of hypoxic hypoxia, if there is one, is that you get euphoric. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to die. Cool. Well, until I saw just a tiny pinpoint of light. And as I was gasping for air, I closed my eyes, what I thought would be the last time. I was brought back to an awareness of what was going on when the door opened and someone saw me in some desperate state and they fitted me for a mask and got me the breathing treatment that I needed, so desperately needed. I spent the next 3 days trying to clear my lungs of the fluid that invaded them and spent $15,000 doing it. I would have rather spent $15,000 on anything else, but at least I was alive. But I will tell you this, as bad as that was, it got me clear about my vision. I knew something had to change, and that's what I did. So I managed to climb out of that hole and experience success that I had never been able to experience before. Not only did I grow my portfolio by 3.5 times, I work now, instead of 22-hour days, I work about 8 hours a month doing that same thing, and I coach others doing the same thing. Now, that said, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't a straight line trajectory up either. It took a lot of time, effort, tears, blood, sweat, not necessarily in that order, but it was rough. But it all started with a rock-solid vision for where I wanted to go. And I think about that. I think about the vision that I'm trying to create for my sons, that I want to create, and why vision is so important. Because when I teach people, they often will come to me and say, well, I want to get into real estate. And I say, oh, that's great. What are you trying to do? And they say, I want 50 rental units. And I say, why not 51? To which they have no good answer. And then they say, well, I don't know. I say, why not 49? You can divide it by 7. And that makes no sense either. So I hit them with enough answers until they finally come to say, and I ask them why enough times to where they finally get to a visceral answer with almost tears in their eyes, and they say, because I don't want to be poor, because I want to raise my sons, and I want to homeschool them, and I want to bring my sick, ailing mother to within a 5-minute drive of me because she's going to die in the next 5 years. Now we're talking. Tomorrow is an important date in history. If you're not familiar, tomorrow is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Now, you might be thinking, why is this related to vision? Or why is this important? It was the largest seaborne invasion ever in war, ever. 150,000 troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, Omaha, Utah, Juneau, Sword, Gold. And there was no guarantee for success. And it was a complete kind of disaster. There was no precision in this military operation, I will tell you. And military precision is not really ever all that precise. Let me tell you, being in the military, and I see some people nodding, you get it. But even though our forces were scattered, even though people were all over the place and they didn't land where they were supposed to, they hooked up and they got it done because they had a rock-solid vision for their future. They wanted to go home, and they knew going home meant going through Berlin. These men, they fought for those who could not. And that's become the legacy of the American warrior. And because of what they did, because of what they accomplished, America has become a guiding light for everywhere in the world. And no matter what, any American soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine that stands up to kick down the door of tyranny, they stand unified in one vision, one message that says, step aside, we're here to let freedom ring. And it's all about vision. Now, this isn't meant to be patriotic. This is meant to be a little bit more about vision. And I think I'm going to wrap this up very quickly because I love this country. I love America. But I will tell you this, I don't know that I'm so in love with our society anymore because I think we've become very distracted by what's really important. But I will tell you this. I think when all you have to do is look at 9/12 to understand that, you couldn't find an American flag. You couldn't find one. And that's what's important, because we all hugged each other a little longer, because we all knew what mattered. And I will tell you this, laying in a hospital bed, understanding my vision, I understood this. There is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. I encourage you, find your vision and move towards it. Thank you.